Welcome back, everyone. It's the end of 2024, and, well, you've given us quite a bit to read on this year's biggest events.
A lot happened.
It did. It feels like every week there was another major development, another crisis, another breakthrough.
It's hard to even keep track.
Exactly. So we're calling this our deep dive into the year that was 2024, and the goal is to really go beyond just recapping the headlines.
Right. We want to understand what it all means.
Yeah, what are the long-term implications of these events? What are the trends that will continue to shape the world in 2025 and beyond? And most importantly, what does it all mean for you, the listener? You've sent us a fascinating source. It's an expert's top 10 list of the most impactful global events.
It's a great starting point.
It is.
Yeah,
It gives
yeah.
us this framework for our conversation.
Exactly. And what I found really interesting is that when you look at these events together, they're not just isolated incidents. It's like we're seeing some major shifts in the global landscape.
Okay, I like that analogy. Shifts like what, though?
Well, think of it like tectonic plates shifting. You have this resurgence in space exploration, but also this increasing militarization of space.
That's a great point. You have this potential for a second China shock as they flood global markets with cheap goods.
But also this incredible progress in AI solving scientific problems, revolutionizing healthcare.
And then, of course, you have the ongoing war in Ukraine, the global anti-incumbent wave, the climate crisis escalating, and this unsettling idea of an axis of autocracies forming. It's a lot.
It is. And we can't forget about the U.S. election results, which definitely add another layer of complexity to the mix.
Definitely. But let's start with space because it's something that captures the imagination. I mean, Japan landed on the moon, China brought back lunar samples. There are even hints of life possibly being discovered on Mars.
It's incredible when you think about how far we've come in such a short time.
It really is. It feels like we're entering a new era of space exploration.
We are. But alongside these incredible achievements, you've also highlighted this concerning trend, the increasing militarization of space.
Right. Russia deploying suspected nuclear-capable weapons in orbit. China bolstering its military satellite presence. It does make you wonder, are we at risk of turning space into another arena for conflict?
It's a valid concern.
Yeah.
Space has always been seen as this frontier of cooperation, this place where international collaboration could flourish.
Right. It was like the symbol of humanity coming together.
Exactly. But as competition between nations intensifies, we have to ask ourselves, are we at risk of jeopardizing that? Imagine a future where instead of collaborating on scientific discoveries, we're locked in a new kind of arms race this time with space-based weapons.
It's a chilling thought. What would that mean for the future of space exploration? Would peaceful scientific collaboration become a casualty?
That's the big question. And it's not just about space exploration. It's about the potential for conflict here on Earth as well. If space becomes a militarized zone, it could have ripple effects that destabilize global security.
It's a lot to think about. Okay, let's shift gears a bit and talk about China, because you've included some reports that suggest we might be heading for what you're calling China Shock 2.0.
Right. Remember the original China shock back in the early 2000s?
Yeah, it was this massive influx of cheap Chinese goods into the global market. It had a huge impact on industries and jobs worldwide.
Exactly. And now it seems like China is facing some economic headwinds.
So their response could be to do what they did before, flood the market with even more cheap goods.
Right. Which could lead to a second China shock where domestic industries in other countries struggle to compete.
So on the one hand, this could mean cheaper goods for consumers, especially things like solar panels and electric vehicles, which would be great for the green transition.
But on the other hand, you could see massive job losses in manufacturing and other sectors as domestic industries struggle to keep up.
It's a tough situation. It's almost like a no-win scenario for other countries.
It raises some critical questions for policymakers. Do they intervene with protectionist measures risking trade wars? Or do they allow market forces to play out, even if it means significant economic disruption in the short term?
It's a delicate balancing act. Now, you've also included some pretty heavy reports on the situation in Sudan, and it's honestly just heartbreaking. The Sudanese civil war is raging on. Tens of thousands of people are dead, millions are displaced, and famine is ravaging Darfur.
It's a humanitarian catastrophe, and it's been largely overlooked by the international community.
You're right. It's easy for these complex conflicts to fade from our awareness when they seem far away.
But the consequences of this war are far-reaching. Think about the refugee flows, the regional instability, the strain on global humanitarian aid. This is something that will have long-lasting impacts.
You've also highlighted the role of the Rapid Support Forces, or RSF, in this conflict. It's a group with a deeply troubling past implicated in the Darfur genocide, and now they're vying for control against the Sudanese armed forces.
It's a complex situation with no easy solutions. There are external actors involved, each with their own agendas, which makes finding a peaceful resolution incredibly difficult.
It feels like a situation that's spiraling out of control. Now let's shift gears again to something that's both awe-inspiring and a bit unsettling, the rapid advancements in artificial intelligence.
Oh, definitely. AI is everywhere now.
It is. You send us articles about AI solving complex scientific problems, revolutionizing healthcare, even winning Nobel Prizes. It's mind-blowing.
It really is. AI has the potential to transform our world in so many positive ways.
It does, but there's also a flip side to all of this, right?
Absolutely. We have to be mindful of the potential downsides.
Like what?
Well, the potential for job displacement is a huge concern.
That's a big one. As AI becomes more sophisticated, what happens to the people whose jobs are automated?
It's a question we need to be asking.
Yeah.
And then there are the ethical dilemmas surrounding AI. We're essentially creating machines that can think for themselves, make decisions, and potentially even surpass human intelligence.
Which is both exciting and terrifying at the same time.
Exactly. It's a powerful technology, and with great power comes great responsibility.
So how do we ensure that AI is used ethically and responsibly? That it benefits all of humanity and doesn't just exacerbate existing inequalities?
That's the challenge.
Yeah.
We need to have these conversations now while the technology is still relatively young to ensure that we're steering it in the right direction.
Well said. Okay, let's move on to a conflict that sadly shows no signs of ending. The war in Ukraine.
It's been another brutal year.
It has. You've highlighted some of the major developments. Russia made some gains, but at a staggering cost.
And Ukraine launched some daring counteroffensives.
And then you have the unexpected entrance of North Korean troops into the fray.
It's a war of attrition that has already claimed hundreds of thousands of lives.
And it's having ripple effects that extend far beyond Ukraine's borders.
Definitely. It's reshaping global alliances, accelerating the shift towards a multipolar world order.
And speaking of global shifts, 2024 was quite a year for incumbents worldwide. It seemed like voters were in the mood for change.
They were tossing out leaders left and right.
From India to the UK, and of course right here in the US, it was a global anti-incumbent wave.
It was. And it raises some interesting questions about the state of democracy worldwide.
Like what?
Well, is this a blip? Or is it a sign of a deeper crisis of confidence in democratic institutions? Are people disillusioned with the status quo, with the way things are being run?
And is this disillusionment leading to the rise of more populist or even authoritarian leaders? That's a bit concerning, right?
It is, and it ties into something else we want to discuss, the emergence of what some are calling the axis of autocracies.
Right. You've highlighted this growing cooperation between China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea, and it's definitely a cause for concern.
These countries share a common interest in challenging U.S. global dominance. And they're increasingly coordinating their actions on the world stage.
It's like they're forming their own power bloc, a counterweight to the Western-led world order.
Exactly. And that raises a lot of questions. How will this impact global security? Will it lead to a new arms race? And how should the U.S. and its allies respond?
It's a complex geopolitical landscape. And to make things even more interesting, we have the return of Donald Trump to the White House.
Yeah, I don't think anyone saw that coming.
It was the biggest political shocker of the year. After everything that happened, the January 6th Capitol riot, the impeachment trial, it seemed like his political career was over.
It did. But he managed to pull off an improbable victory.
He did. And now he's back in the Oval Office for a second term.
Which raises a whole new set of questions. What will a second Trump presidency look like? Will he double down on his America First agenda? How will he approach these emerging global power blocks?
And how will the world react to his return? It's going to be fascinating to watch it all unfold.
It definitely will.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground in this first segment, but we've only just scratched the surface. Stay tuned, because when we come back, we'll be diving deeper into the climate crisis, the aftermath of the Hamas-Israel war, and the implications of Trump's return to the White House.
Welcome back. Before the break, we were talking about some pretty heavy stuff. Global power shifts, political upheavals, all this conflict.
It's a lot. It's easy to get caught up in all the drama, all the headlines.
Right. But in the midst of all of that, we also have to talk about the climate crisis.
Yeah, it's like this looming threat in the background.
It is, and it's not getting any better.
No, it's not. You've shared some pretty sobering reports with us. 2024 was the hottest year on record.
It was. We're seeing more and more of these billion-dollar climate disasters.
Heat waves, droughts, floods, wildfires. It's happening everywhere.
It is. And it's affecting all of us,
And even the Amazon rainforest is showing signs of drying up.
which is terrifying. The Amazon is this incredible carbon sink. It plays a vital role in regulating the global climate.
So if that starts to fail, the consequences are unthinkable.
They are. The scientific community has been warning us about this for decades, and now we're seeing those warnings come to fruition.
It's easy to feel hopeless in the face of all this.
I know. But we can't give up. We have to keep fighting for a better future.
You're right. And speaking of fighting for a better future, you've also included some articles about some pretty cool technological advancements.
Oh, yeah. There's some really exciting stuff happening.
Things like renewable energy, carbon capture, even geoengineering.
These technologies have the potential to make a real difference in mitigating climate change.
So do you think they offer a glimmer of hope?
I do. I think they're a crucial part of the solution. But technology alone isn't enough.
We need something more, right?
Right. We need political will. We need collective action. We need a fundamental shift in how we think about and interact with our planet.
Have you noticed any impacts of climate change in your own life, in your local community?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We're seeing more extreme weather events, even in areas that haven't historically experienced them.
Right, like those crazy heat waves we had this summer.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's a reminder that climate change isn't some abstract concept. It's something that's happening right now. It's affecting real people in tangible ways.
And it's going to require all of us to make changes to adapt to this new reality.
We can't just sit back and wait for someone else to fix it. We all have a role to play.
You're right. It's about taking ownership of the problem and working together to find solutions.
Exactly. It's about individual action, collective action, and systemic change all working in concert.
Well said.
Uh,
Okay, let's shift gears geographically and talk about another region that's been in the headlines a lot this year, the Middle East.
Oh boy, yeah. Lots of twists and turns there.
That's an understatement.
Yeah.
You've included some fascinating articles on the fallout from the Hamas-Israel war.
It's been a year of dramatic shifts in the region.
You've got Iran's involvement in the conflict, the weakening of both Hamas and Hezbollah.
And the fall of Assad in Syria.
It's like the whole geopolitical landscape has been reshuffled.
It really has.
Yeah.
And it's hard to say what the long-term implications will be.
Do you think this upheaval will ultimately lead to a more stable Middle East, or just create the conditions for new conflicts down the line?
That's the million-dollar question. On the one hand, the weakening of groups like Hamas and Hezbollah could create an opportunity for a new peace process to take root.
It's possible, I guess.
But on the other hand, the power vacuum created by the fall of Assad in Syria could easily lead to further instability and violence.
And then you have all the external actors involved. The Middle East has always been this geopolitical chessboard with global powers vying for influence.
It's a complex web of alliances and rivalries.
Yeah.
It's hard to predict how things will play out.
But it's safe to say that the events of 2024 have profoundly altered the balance of power in the region.
Definitely. The aftershocks will be felt for years to come.
Now, remember before the break, we were talking about this unsettling trend of this axis of autocracies emerging.
Right? China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea, they're getting cozy.
They are. And it's not just a coincidence.
No, it's a deliberate strategy. They're banding together to challenge U.S. global dominance.
And they're not being subtle about it either.
Not really. They're pooling their resources, coordinating their diplomatic efforts, even conducting joint military exercises.
It's like they're sending a clear message to the West. We're here. We're a force to be reckoned with, and we're not going away.
Exactly. They see the current world order, the one with the U.S. at the helm, as unfair and biased against their interests.
So they're trying to create a new world order, one where power is more evenly distributed?
Right, a multipolar world where they have a greater say in global affairs.
But how stable is this alliance, really? Are their interests truly aligned, or is this just a marriage of convenience that could easily fall apart?
That's a good question. On the surface, they seem united by their opposition to the U.S., but if you look closer, you'll see that each country has its own motivations and ambitions.
Right. China's focused on economic expansion and regional dominance.
And Russia seems more interested in restoring its former superpower status.
And Iran is driven by ideological and religious goals.
And North Korea, well, they're mostly concerned with regime survival.
So it's a mixed bag. It's not clear how long this alliance can hold together.
It'll be interesting to watch how it all plays out.
It will, and it'll be even more interesting to see how the U.S. and its allies respond to this challenge.
Do they take a hardline approach, risking escalation and conflict?
Or do they try to engage diplomatically, finding areas of cooperation?
It's a tough call. There are no easy answers.
Okay, back to the U.S. and the big political story of the year, Donald Trump's return to the White House.
What a comeback story.
It was a real nail-biter of an election.
Yeah.
After everything that happened with January 6th, the impeachment trial, I mean, most people thought his political career was over.
I know I did. But he proved us all wrong.
He did. He managed to tap into this vein of discontent among his base, capitalize on economic anxieties and fears about immigration, and pull off an improbable victory.
It was a stunning upset.
So what can we expect from a second Trump presidency?
That's the big question. Will he double down on his America First agenda? Or will he try to moderate his tone and policies?
Will he further alienate U.S. allies? Or will he try to repair those relationships?
And how will he handle these emerging global power blocks? Will he confront them head on or try to find a way to coexist?
So many questions. Only time will tell, I guess.
It will, but it's going to be a wild ride, that's for sure.
We're out of time for this segment, but stay tuned because when we come back, we'll be exploring the long-term implications of all these events and what they mean for the future for you and for the world. Welcome back to the show. We've been talking about the biggest events of 2024, and, well, it's been a lot.
It has. A lot to process.
It really is.
Yeah.
You know, we've talked about everything from space exploration to AI to climate change to political upheavals and global power shifts.
Yeah, and even a reality TV star turned president returning to the White House.
Oh, yeah, we can't forget about that. It's enough to make your head spin.
Seriously, it's like the world is changing faster than ever before.
It does feel that way. So now that we've kind of laid out all these major developments, the big question is, what does it all mean?
Right. What's the takeaway for the listener? How do we make sense of all this change? And more importantly, what can we do about it?
Exactly. It's easy to feel overwhelmed by it all. Like we're just tiny little specks in this vast universe with no control over the direction things are headed.
I get that,
Yeah.
but I actually think it's the opposite.
Really?
Yeah, I think this is a moment where individual actions matter more than ever.
Okay, I'm listening.
Think about it. 2024 was the year the old order started to crumble.
In a lot of ways it was.
So the question is, what comes next? What will rise in its place?
And how do we ensure that it's something better than what we had before?
Exactly. And that's where we come in. That's where our choices, our actions, the conversations we have, they all matter.
So you're saying we're not just passive observers? We actually have the power to shape the future.
Absolutely. We might not be able to single-handedly solve climate change or prevent wars, but we can make choices in our own lives that contribute to a better world.
Like what?
Well, for starters, we can educate ourselves about the issues. That's what we've been doing in this deep dive, right?
Trying to make sense of it all.
Right. Once we understand the challenges, we can start to think about solutions.
Okay, so knowledge is power.
Exactly. And then we can take action. Support organizations that are working to address these challenges.
Donate our time or money.
Exactly. We can make conscious choices about the products we buy, the companies we support.
Vote for leaders who align with our values.
Yes. And most importantly, we can talk to each other. Have those difficult conversations with our friends and family.
Sometimes those are the hardest conversations.
They can be, but they're also the most important. If we want to create a better future, we need to be able to listen to each other, understand different perspectives, and find common ground.
It's about building bridges instead of walls.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that we're all in this together.
And that even small actions can make a difference.
Absolutely. Think about it. Every time you choose to walk instead of drive, or buy a product from a sustainable company, or have a conversation with someone who has different views than your own, you're contributing to a better world.
It's about creating a ripple effect.
Exactly. And those ripples, they can spread and create real change.
So it's not about feeling powerless. It's about feeling empowered.
Right. It's about recognizing that we have agency, that we have the power to shape the future.
That's a great message to end on. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the year that was 2024. It's been a wild ride.
It has. But hey, that's the world we live in.
It is. And who knows what 2025 has in store for us?
Only time will tell.
It will. But one thing's for sure, we'll be here to break it all down for you.
Absolutely. Thanks for listening, everyone.
And remember, the future is not something that happens to us. It's something we create together.